Hi again. This is a part 2 of the first video. Since I started reading of Mice and Men, and so I'm just gonna keep reading it. Alright, I think I left off page 8, because I had a little thingy there. I don't know where I left off. I'm just gonna assume. I'll just read a couple pages, because, I don't want a really long video, but I don't want a really short video either. Ha! I don't know where I was. Alright. I think I was there. Okay. Lennie got up on his knees and looked down at George. Ain't we gonna have no supper? Sure we are, if you gather up dead willow sticks. I got 3 cans of beans in my bindle. You get a fire ready. I'll give you a match when you get the sticks together. Then we'll heat up the beans and have supper. Lennie said, I like beans with ketchup. Well, we ain't got no ketchup. You go get wood. And don't you fool around. It'll be dark before long. Lennie lumbered to his feet and disappeared in the brush. George lay where he was and whistled softly to himself. There were sounds of splashing down the river in the direction Lennie had taken. George stopped whistling and listened. Poor bastard, he said softly, and then he went on whistling again. In a moment, Lennie came back, crashing back through the brush. He carried one small willow stick in his hand. George sat up. All right, he said brusquely. Give me that mouse. But Lennie made an elaborate pantomime of innocence. What mouse, George? I ain't got no mouse. George held out his hand. Come on. Give it to me. You ain't put nothing over. Lennie hesitated, backed away, looked wildly at the brush line as though contemplating running for his freedom. George said coldly, You gonna give me that mouse, or do I have to sock you? Give you what, George? You know goddamn well what. I want that mouse. Lennie reluctantly reached into his pocket. His voice broke a little. I don't know why I can't keep it. It ain't nobody's mouse. I didn't steal it. I found it lying right beside the road. George's hand remained outstretched imperiously. Slowly, like a terrier who doesn't want to bring a ball to his master. Lennie approached, drew back, approached again. George snapped his fingers sharply, and at the sound, Lennie laid the mouse on his hand. I wasn't doing nothing bad with it, George. Just stroking it. George stood up and threw the mouse as far as... Sorry, I heard something. What the? As far as he could into the darkening brush. And then he stepped into the pool and washed his hands. You crazy fool. Don't you think I could see your feet was wet when you went across the river to get it? Oh my God. He heard Lennie's whimpering cry and wheeled about. Blubbering like a baby. Jesus Christ, a big guy like you. Lennie's lip quivered and tears started in his eyes. Oh, Lennie. George put his hands on Lennie's shoulders. I ain't taking it away just for meanness. That mouse ain't fresh. Lennie. And besides, you've broken it petting it. You get another mouse that's fresh and I'll let you keep it a little while. Lennie sat down on the ground and hung his head dejectedly. I don't know where there's another mouse. I remember a lady used to give them to me, every one she got. But that lady ain't here. George scoffed. Lady, huh? Don't even remember who that lady was. That was your own Aunt Clara. And she stopped giving them to you. You always killed them. Lennie looked sadly up at him. They were so little, he said apologetically. I'd pet them, and pretty soon they bit my finger, and I pinched their heads a little, and when they was dead, because they were so little. I wish we'd get the rabbits pretty soon, George. They ain't so little. The hell with the rabbits. And you ain't to be trusted with no live mice. Your Aunt Clara would give you a rubber mouse, and you wouldn't have nothing to do with it. It wasn't no good pet. It wasn't no good to pet, said Lennie. The flame of the sunset lifted from the mountaintops, and dusk came into the valley, and half of darkness came in among the willows and the sycamores. A big carp rose to the surface of the pool, gulped air, and then sank mysteriously into the dark water again, leaving widening rings on the water. Overhead, the leaves whisked again, and little puffs of willow cotton blew down and landed on the full surface. You gonna get that wood? George demanded. There's plenty right up against the back of the sycamore. Floodwater wood. Now you get it. Lennie went behind the tree and brought out a litter of dried leaves and twigs. He threw them in a heap on the old and ash pile and went back for more and more. It was almost night now. A dove's wings whistled over the water. George walked to the fire pile and lighted the dry leaves. The flame cracked up among the twigs and fell to work. George undid his bindle and brought out 3 cans of beans. He stood them about the fire, close in against the blaze, but no quite touching the flames. There's enough beans for 4 men, George said. Beans. I love me some beans. Lennie watched him over the fire. He said patiently, I like 'em with ketchup. Well, we ain't got any. George exploded. Whatever we ain't got, that's what you want. God almighty, if I was alone, I could live so easy. I could get a job and work and no trouble. No mess at all. When the end of the month comes, I could take my $50 and go into town and get whatever I want. Why, I could stay in a cat house all night. I could eat any place I want, hotel or any place, and order any damn thing I could think of. And I could do all that every damn month. Get a gallon of whiskey, or sit out in a pool room and play cards or shoot pool. Lennie knelt and looked over the fire at the angry George, and Lennie's face was drawn with terror. And what I got, George went on furiously, I got you. You can't keep a job and you'll... You can't keep a job and you'll lose me every... What? Wait, you can't keep a job and you lose me every job I get. Oh, you can't keep a job and you lose me every job I get. Just keep me showing all over the country. Just keep me shoving. Just keep me shoving all over the country all the time. And that ain't the worst. You get in trouble. You do bad things and I got to get out of it. I got to get you out of it. I'm so sorry. I can't read. His voice rose nearly to a shout. You crazy son of a bitch. You keep me in hot water all the time. He took on the elaborate manner of little girls when they were all mimicking one another. Just wanted to feel that girl's dress. Just wanted to pet it like it was a mouse. Well, how the hell does she know you just wanted to feel a dress? She jerks back and you hold it on like a mouse. She yells and we got to hide in an irrigation ditch all day with guys looking for us. And we got to sneak out in the dark and get out of the country. All the time, something like that. All the time. I wish I could put you in a cage with about 1,000,000 mice and let you have fun. His anger left him suddenly. He looked across the fire at Lennie's anguished face, and then he looked ashamedly at the flames. It was quite dark now, but the fire lighted the trunks. There's also notes on the book, look, because I borrowed the book from like a library. Like, yeah. And the notes are like, George is a mean guy who is ashamed of being with Lennie. And then the bottom one says, Lennie has an obsession over mice and once pretending a girl's dress was a mouse and never let go of the girl like it was a mouse. Thank you, random person. Your contribution to this will be forever acknowledged. Oh, hold on. I gotta read it accordingly. So, it was quite dark now, but the fire lighted the trunks of the trees and curving branches overhead. Lennie crouched slowly and cautiously around the fire until he was close to George. He sat back on his heels. George turned the bean cans so that another side faced the fire. He pretended to be unaware of Lennie so close beside him. George, very softly. No answer. George, what do you want? I was only fooling, George. I don't want no ketchup. I wouldn't eat no ketchup if it was right here beside me. If it was here, you would have some. But I wouldn't eat none, George. I'd leave it all for you. You could cover your beans with it and I wouldn't touch none of it. George still stared morosely at the fire. When I think of the swell time I could have had without you, I go nuts. I never get no peace. Lennie still knelt. He looked off into the darkness across the river. George, you want I should go away and leave you alone. Where the hell could you go? Well, I could. I could go off on the hills there. Someplace I'd find a cave. Yeah? How'd you eat? You ain't got sense enough to find nothing to eat. I'd find things, George. I don't need no nice food with ketchup. I lay out in the sun and nobody hurt me. And if I found a mouse, I'd keep it. Nobody take it away from me. George looked quickly and searchingly at him. I've been mean, ain't I? If you don't want me, I can go off in the hills and find a cave. I can go away anytime. No, look, I was just fooling Lenny, because I want you to stay with me. The trouble with mice is you always kill them. He paused. Tell you what I'll do. Lenny, first chance I get, I'll give you a pup. Maybe you wouldn't kill it. That'd be better than a mice. And you could pet it harder. Lenny avoided the bait. He had sensed his advantage. If you don't want me, you only just got to say it. And I'll go off in those hills right there. Right up in those hills and live by myself. And I won't get no mice stole from me. George said. I want you to stay with me, Lenny. Jesus Christ, somebody shoot you over for a coyote if you was by yourself. No, you stay with me. Your Aunt Clara wouldn't like you running off by yourself, even if she was dead. Then he spoke craftily. Tell me like you done before. Tell you what? About the rabbits, George snapped. You ain't gonna put nothing over on me, Lenny pleaded. Come on, George, tell me. Please, George, like you done before. You get a kick out of that, don't you? All right, I'll tell you, and then we'll eat our supper. George's voice became deeper. He repeated his words rhythmically, as though he had said them many times before. Guys like us that work on ranches are the loneliest guys in the world. They got no family, they don't belong no place. They come to a ranch and work up a stake and then they get into town and blow their stake. And the first thing you know, they're pounding their tails on some other ranch. They ain't got nothing to look ahead to. Lenny was delighted. And that's it. And that's it. No, tell me how it is with us. George went on. With us, it ain't like that. You got a future. You got somebody to talk to that gives a damn about us. We don't have to sit in no bar room blowing our jack just because we got no place else to go. If them other guys gets in jail, they can rot for anybody gives a damn. But not us. Lenny broke in. Not us. And why? Because I got you to look after me. And you got me to look after you. And that's why. He laughed delightedly. Go on now, George. You got it by heart. You can do it yourself. No, you. I forgot some of the things. Tell about how it's gonna be. Tell about how it's gonna be. My God. Okay. Someday we're gonna get a jack together. We're gonna have a little house and a couple of acres and a cow and some pigs and live off the fat of the land. The fat of the land. The land? Live off the fat of the land. Lenny shouted. And have rabbits. Go on, George. Tell about what we're going to have in the garden, and about the rabbits and the cages, and about the rain in the winter, and the stove, and how thick the cream is on the milk, like you can hardly cut it. Tell about that, George. Why don't you do it yourself? You know all of it. No, you tell it. It ain't the same if I tell it. Go on, George. How I get to tend to the rabbits. Well, said George, I'll have a big vegetable patch and a rabbit hutch and chickens. When it rains in the winter, we'll just say, the hell with going on to work. And we'll build up a fire in the stove and sit around it and listen to the rain coming down on the roof. Nuts! Also, it says, George and Lenny both have big dreams. Lenny is like a baby who needs to be taken care of. George is practically Lenny's guardian. Again, thank you, random person. I appreciate it. He took out his pocket knife. I ain't got no time for no more. He drove his knife through the top of one of the bean cans, sawed out the top, and passed the can to Lenny. Then he opened a second can. From his side pocket, he brought out 2 spoons and passed one of them to Lenny. They sat by the fire and filled their mouths with the beans that chewed mightily. A few beans slipped out of the side of Lenny's mouth. George gestured with the spoon. What you gonna say tomorrow when the boss asks you questions? Lenny stopped chewing and swallowed. His face was concentrated. I ain't gonna say a word. I didn't do that with enough enthusiasm. Hold on. I ain't gonna say a word. Good boy. That's fine, Lenny. Maybe you're getting better. When we get the couple acres, I can let you tend to the rabbits. All right. Especially if you remember as good as that. Lennie choked with pride. I can remember, he said. Why did I... Hold on. Lennie choked with pride. I can remember. Like an anime protagonist. I can remember. George motioned with his spoon again. Look, Lennie, I want you to look around here. You can remember this place, can't you? The ranch is about a quarter mile up the way. Just follow the river. Sure, said Lennie. I can remember this, didn't I? Didn't I remember about not saying a word? Of course you did. Well, look, Lennie, if you just happen to get in any trouble, like you always done before, I want you to come right here and hide in the brush. Hide in the brush, said Lennie slowly. Hide in the brush till I come for you. Can you remember that? Sure I can, George. Hide in the brush till you come. But you ain't gonna get in no trouble, because if you do, I won't let you tend to the rabbits. He threw his empty bean can off into the brush. I won't get in no trouble, George. I ain't gonna say a word. Okay. Bring your bundle over here by the fire. It's gonna be nice sleeping here. Looking up in the leaves. Don't build up no more fire. We'll let her die down. Yeah, let her down. They made their beds in the sand, and as the blaze dropped from the fire, the sphere of light grew smaller. The curling branches disappeared, and only a faint glimmer showed where the tree trunks were. Ugh. From the darkness, Lennie called, George, you asleep? No. What do you want? Let's have different color rabbits, George. Sure we will, George said sleepily. Red and blue and green rabbits. Lennie, millions of them. Furry ones, George, like I seen in the fair in Sacramento. Sure, furry ones. 'Cause I can just as well go away, George, and live in a cave. You can just as well go to hell, said George. Shut up now. The red light dimmed on the coals. Up the hill from the river a coyote yammered, and a dog answered from the other side of the stream. The sycamore leaves whispered in a little night breeze. And on the side it says, Lennie has a good imagination. And that's that, because chapter starts here. So I'm going to put a little thing here for next time. That is a funny book. Lennie be like, tell me about the rabbits, George. And George be like, rabbits. I'm pretty sure most of you read the book, so you know what's going to happen. Tell him about the rabbits. But I won't spoil them, even though that was kind of a spoiler. I'm sorry. But who knows? Maybe the book ends to... Oh my god. When you take care of your books. My bad. Yikes. Anyway, that's Of Mice and Men. After this, I'll probably read another book, if I can find one. Maybe a manga. That'd be really funny. But I don't want to read manga, because, like, I'd rather read something like this, because it's not easy to read, but I don't know. I guess it is easy to read. I don't know. I'll figure it out when I get there. For now, Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck. What? Nice.